NASA's long-lost spaceplane might finally have a shot at flying. And surprisingly, the company that once beat it to orbit may now be the one to save it. We're talking about Dream Chaser, Sierra Space's sleek, shuttle-style space plane that's been grounded since its inception back in 2004. Not totally because it's not ready, not because it can't fly, but because the rocket is booked on, still isn't available for it yet. While more reliable launch options like SpaceX's Falcon 9 are flying almost every week, Dream Chaser's unique design just doesn't quite fit until now. A new solution is on the horizon. And yes, it comes from SpaceX. Could this be the moment that wakes Dream Chaser from its 20-year slumber? In this episode of TechMap, we break down how one of the most powerful rockets in the world might be the key to getting Dream Chaser off the ground. Literally. Sierra Space's Dream Chaser is shaping up to be a major player in America's commercial space sector. NASA's inclusion of the Dream Chaser as part of its International Space Station cargo fleet, alongside Orbital Science's Cygnus and SpaceX's Dragon, adds much-needed redundancy and variety. This becomes even more critical today as many experts voice growing concerns about NASA relying too heavily on SpaceX. Looking ahead, when the crewed version of Dream Chaser eventually launches, it could serve as a viable backup for SpaceX's Starship, particularly for suborbital missions. Unlike the massive Starship, which requires intricate ground support systems, Dream Chaser is compact and nimble, an ideal choice for time-sensitive missions. With its airplane-style lifting body design, it can land on any conventional runway worldwide. That means quicker access to cargo compared to SpaceX's Dragon, which splashes down in the ocean, or Boeing's Starliner, which often lands in remote locations. In short, Dream Chaser wins on time efficiency. Cost is another area where Dream Chaser shines. It's partially reusable, making it less expensive than fully expendable vehicles. Moreover, by using existing airport infrastructure rather than needing custom-built setups like Starship's Mechazilla, logistics become simpler and more economical. Critics point out that Dream Chaser's small size could be a drawback, especially when compared to the cargo hauling capacity of larger spacecraft, like NASA's retired space shuttle. But Sierra Space has been laser-focused on maximizing the vehicle's payload. It can carry up to 12,000 pounds, 5,500 kilograms of cargo, matching SpaceX's Cargo Dragon and exceeding NASA's commercial resupply services' 2 requirements. Since day one, Sierra Space's goal has been to support critical scientific missions. That's why Dream Chaser is built to prioritize pressurized cargo. Thanks to the addition of the Shooting Star cargo module, its pressurized volume jumps to 33 cubic meters, almost 4 times that of Dragon. And let's not forget other standout features: gentle runway landings, compatibility with multiple launch vehicles due to its ability to fit inside existing rocket fairings, and environmentally friendly, non-toxic propellants. That said, the biggest hurdle for Sierra Space right now is finding a reliable launch provider. As I've mentioned in several videos, depending solely on ULA's Vulcan Centaur rocket limits their options. Naturally, SpaceX enters the conversation here, thanks to its frequent dependable launches. But there's a technical hitch. Dream Chaser just doesn't fit inside Falcon 9's fairing. Dream Chaser is about 30 feet, 9 meters long, and 15 feet, 4.5 meters, wide because of its winged lifting body shape. Meanwhile, Falcon 9's fairing offers an internal diameter of 17 feet, 5.2 meters, and a height of just 43 feet, 13.1 meters. Simply put, Dream Chaser needs a launch vehicle with a larger fairing volume, ruling Falcon 9 out for now. So, what's the solution moving forward? Back in January, a photo went viral on X showcasing Falcon Heavy's extended fairing. Now, while the standard Falcon Heavy uses the same fairing as Falcon 9, this new extended version is a game changer. It's significantly taller, reportedly measuring around 18.6 meters, 61 feet in height while keeping a similar diameter. This upgrade was driven by the need to accommodate larger payloads, like those destined for the Lunar Gateway or critical Department of Defense missions that simply won't fit inside the regular fairing. SpaceX billed the cost of this fairing development to the DoD under early NSSL Phase 2 contracts, which underscores how crucial it is for military use. One catch: unlike the standard fairing, this one isn't designed to be recovered and reused. Its increased size and weight make recovery too complicated. That said, this opens a very real possibility for both SpaceX and Sierra Space to consider this extended fairing for Dream Chaser's upcoming Demo 1 mission. Now, let's talk about Falcon Heavy itself. This rocket is an absolute beast. It is widely recognized as one of the most powerful operational rockets in the world. The Falcon Heavy is essentially a beefed-up Falcon 9 at its core, flanked by 2 additional Falcon 9 first stages, used as strap-on boosters. The whole thing stands 70 meters tall, that's 229.6 feet, and has a total diameter of 12.2 meters, 39.9 feet. Fully fueled, it weighs in at a staggering 1,420,788 kilograms, or over 3.1 million pounds. It's powered by 27 Merlin 1D engines, 9 on each of the 3 cores, producing a jaw-dropping 5 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. To put that in perspective, that's like launching 18 747 jets all at once at full throttle. Payload-wise, it's no slouch. Falcon Heavy can deliver 63,800 kilograms, 140,660 pounds, to low Earth orbit, 26,700 kilograms, 58,860 pounds, to geostationary transfer orbit, and 16,800 kilograms, 37,040 pounds, to Mars. What makes this powerhouse even more impressive is its reusability. Just like Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy's side boosters and center core are built to return and land vertically, cutting costs and boosting launch cadence. Nevertheless, in recent years, it is rumored that SpaceX has no longer attempted to recover the core stage, only recovering the side boosters. Landing the center core is a lot harder than landing the side boosters. While the 2 side boosters routinely land successfully on land, the center core lands on a drone ship far downrange, facing rough sea conditions and logistical challenges. In reality, the center core only landed successfully once, during Arabsat 6A mission on April 11, 2019. It was then lost during transport due to rough seas, causing it to tip over and sustain heavy damage. Additionally, recovering the center core requires more fuel for deceleration, which reduces the rocket's payload capacity. By not recovering the center core, Falcon Heavy can carry significantly heavier payloads. By not recovering the center core in combination with sheer muscle, Falcon Heavy is tailor-made for deploying large satellites, interplanetary missions, and complex government or commercial payloads. Perfectly positioned to handle the future, like launching the Dream Chaser. Anyway, if you love this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. Check out our other videos on Starship, Artemis, and more, and let's keep exploring the cosmos together. Dream Chaser's whole journey really kicked off back in 2014, when Sierra Nevada Corporation SNC lost a lawsuit against NASA. The lawsuit stems from the National Space Agency awarding its coveted crewed spaceflight contracts to SpaceX and Boeing, leaving SNC out in the cold. A big reason? SNC was banking on its innovative Dream Chaser spaceplane, a sleek, winged vehicle reminiscent of the Space Shuttle, while competitors stuck with the more conventional, flight-proven capsule design. But as they say, when one door closes, another opens. Fast forward to 2016, and SNC got a second chance. NASA selected Dream Chaser for its Commercial Resupply Services 2 contract. But there was a twist. While Dream Chaser was originally intended to carry astronauts, its debut mission would be an uncrewed cargo flight. Still, SNC hasn't shelved its crewed ambitions. Right now, their top priority is getting the cargo version flight ready. Even with its shift in focus, the Dream Chaser is still cool, whether it's flying with a crew or carrying cargo. There's something truly special about seeing the spirit of NASA's iconic space shuttle reborn, this time in a sleeker, more advanced, and more dependable form. So the question here, when will it launch? In 2020, Steve Lindsay, SNC's Vice President of Space Exploration Systems, was optimistic, announcing a 2021 target launch. But here we are 4 years later, and Dream Chaser is still grounded. The first cargo model, aptly named Tenacity, is in its final testing phase at NASA facilities, and now aiming for a launch no earlier than Q3 2025. So what's been holding things up? The biggest culprit is launch logistics. Dream Chaser was supposed to ride on United Launch Alliance's new Vulcan Centaur rocket, but ULA had to push back that launch plan to prioritize getting Vulcan certified for high-priority U.S. Space Force missions. That meant dummy payloads took the spotlight, while Dream Chaser's debut got benched. While there is a tentative launch slot for Tenacity in late 2025, everything remains uncertain. ULA is juggling a heavy backlog of military launches, pushing that 2025 timeline even further. SNC did have a backup, ULA's trusted Atlas V rocket. But relying on a single launch provider, especially one in transition, is risky. ULA officially stopped making the Atlas V in 2024, and with only 14 launches left to fulfill existing commitments, like Boeing's Starliner and other government payloads, Dream Chaser's chances of hitching a ride on one are slim. With pressure mounting, it might be time for a hard reset. Look at Blue Origin. After years of delays on the New Glenn rocket, they swapped leadership in 2023. Dave Limp took over as CEO, and sure enough, New Glenn finally launched in early 2025. Now, Sierra Space could be hoping for the same turnaround. At the end of 2024, longtime CEO Tom Weiss stepped down after leading since 2021 when the company spun out from SNC. Chairman Fatih Osman stepped in as interim CEO, while Aaron Osman became president. It's a pivotal moment, and one that could define Dream Chaser's future in space. If Sierra Space's Tenacity successfully enters service, it could outshine Boeing's troubled CST-100 Starliner and stand alongside SpaceX's trusted Crew Dragon, not based on flight history, but on its promising future potential. While adopting the capsule design on Dragon, rooted in the Apollo era, allowed NASA to swiftly end its reliance on Russia's Soyuz spacecraft and enabled Dragon to enter service more quickly. It also places limitations on long-term capabilities. Dragon capsules splash down in the ocean, but Dream Chaser is built to glide back to Earth and land on traditional runways almost anywhere. That kind of airplane-like convenience means faster, gentler returns of cargo and experiments, reducing stress on fragile payloads. This makes Dream Chaser especially appealing for critical scientific research and time-sensitive missions. Dream Chaser Tenacity boasts a total pressurized volume of 33 cubic meters, which includes both the spaceplane and its Shooting Star cargo module. That's nearly half the volume of the old Space Shuttle, even though Tenacity is only 9 meters, 30 feet long, about 1/4 of the shuttle's length. Instead of a side hatch like SpaceX's Dragon capsule, Tenacity is accessed from the rear of the spacecraft. Now let's talk numbers. Dragon's pressurized capsule holds around 9.3 cubic meters, plus an additional 37 cubic meters in its unpressurized trunk. But here's the catch. The trunk isn't pressurized and is mainly used for carrying unpressurized cargo. Dream Chaser, on the other hand, combines 33 cubic meters of fully pressurized volume between the spaceplane and module, an advantage for certain mission types. In terms of payload, Dream Chaser with the Shooting Star module can haul up to 12,000 pounds, 5,500 kilograms of cargo, 5,000 kilograms of which is pressurized, while Cargo Dragon can carry slightly more at 13,000 pounds, 6,000 kilograms. It has a lower pressurized cargo limit at 3,000 kilograms. Sierra Space clearly designed Tenacity to pack in as much pressurized volume as possible within a compact vehicle. They stretched the interior lengthwise rather than vertically, creating a long cylindrical space that's not tall enough to stand in, but runs almost the full length of the vehicle. Inside, various tanks and tech components take up room on all sides. For instance, at the bottom of the spacecraft, large compartments store the landing wheels. These fold in and out during landings. Interestingly, instead of using a third nose wheel like most aircraft, Sierra Space opted for a skid plate. It's simpler and saves internal space, allowing more room for cargo. When it comes to bringing stuff back down from orbit, Tenacity has a smaller return capacity, 1,750 kilograms, 3,860 pounds, compared to Dragon's 2,507 kilograms, 5,527 pounds. That's because only the Dream Chaser spaceplane returns to Earth, while the larger Shooting Star module is discarded after each mission. So even though Tenacity can carry up to 5.5 tons of cargo to space, only about 1/3 of that gets returned. That said, Sierra Space has chosen to prioritize pressurized cargo delivery over downmass return. This makes sense when you consider what's usually inside: critical science experiments and commercial tech that need protection and stable conditions in transit. These payloads support experiments on the International Space Station, studying how things behave in microgravity. Think biology, medical research, materials science, and physics. Clearly, the company wants to play an important role in supporting space research and industry. To support those missions, Sierra Space ran a key test to demonstrate that Dream Chaser can power, cool, and communicate with multiple powered payloads inside its pressurized cabin. This milestone is crucial for Dream Chaser's upcoming resupply mission to the ISS. During Joint Test 10B, the team evaluated 3 payloads that are being considered for the spacecraft's first official mission, Dream Chaser Demo 1. And it's not just NASA that's interested. Sierra Space is also working with commercial partners like Merck to take pharmaceutical research into orbit. A future mission will test growing microscopic protein crystals in microgravity aboard the ISS. These crystals form better in space due to the lack of gravity-driven flaws, giving scientists clearer insight into protein structures. That, in turn, speeds up the development of new, more effective drugs, including cancer treatments. Finally, Dream Chaser's ability to land gently on a runway, like a traditional airplane, means scientists can quickly retrieve delicate experiments for analysis without waiting for lengthy ocean recoveries like those used by splashdown capsules. Sierra Space's Dream Chaser stands out with its unique lifting body design. This advanced engineering allows the spacecraft to glide back through Earth's atmosphere and perform smooth, controlled landings on standard runways. One of Dream Chaser's most valuable features is its adaptability. Everything from launch and landing locations to mission length and vehicle setup can be customized to meet a wide range of user needs. It runs on non-toxic fuel and doesn't rely on special ground infrastructure, which means it can land on any suitable aircraft runway around the globe. Some experts even see Dream Chaser's Earth point-to-point potential as a unique advantage over SpaceX's Starship, especially since it doesn't need a massive ground system like Mechazilla to land. This flexibility brings major benefits. Payloads and crew can return from orbit quickly and safely, arriving closer to their destinations, which saves time and enhances safety. The ability to land at different global locations also makes it easier for scientists around the world to collaborate on space missions. And when it comes to crew safety, Dream Chaser could be a literal lifesaver. If a medical emergency occurred on the ISS or in orbit, its human-rated version could rapidly bring astronauts back to Earth. Even in unexpected situations, like emergency landings, its airplane-like landing capability means it can use virtually any runway infrastructure available across the world. Sierra Nevada Corporation, the company behind Dream Chaser, is the only private organization building a spacecraft that lands like an aircraft, unlike SpaceX's Dragon, which follows the Apollo-style capsule approach. Capsules typically descend using parachutes and splash down in the ocean. But Dream Chaser combines parachutes and/or rocket propulsion to ensure a soft, controlled landing on solid ground. Water landings, like those used by Dragon, come with some drawbacks. If the capsule hull is breached or the hatch opens too soon, it can flood and sink, as famously happened with Gus Grissom's Liberty Bell 7. Salt water is also a problem. It corrodes components and damages delicate electronics, which increases the time and cost of preparing the vehicle for its next mission. Another issue is safety. During splashdowns, curious private boats sometimes enter the recovery zone. Bystanders could swarm the area, putting themselves at risk from toxic fumes like nitrogen tetroxide and disrupting recovery operations. By contrast, airport runways are carefully engineered and controlled environments. Built from concrete or asphalt, they're equipped with lights, markings, and navigation tools to help pilots land safely. Using runways allows Dream Chaser to land in a far more predictable and safe manner, avoiding the unpredictable nature of ocean splashdowns and the complications that come with them. In the urgent case, during descent, when Dream Chaser is to find itself in an uncontrolled spin, it will use gyroscopes, spinning tools that sense movement, and accelerometers, devices that measure speed changes, to figure out where it's going. Then it fires thrusters to steer. When it gets close to Earth, the air is too thick for thrusters to work well. So it uses wings and other parts, like an airplane, to steer and land safely. If it starts spinning, like a top, it's because the wings might stall, lose lift. It can use those airplane-like parts to stop the spin and recover. This mix of space and airplane tech is pretty neat. So, with all these impressive features, why didn't NASA initially pick Dream Chaser for its commercial crew program? Let's rewind a bit. Sierra Nevada originally proposed Dream Chaser as a competitor to Boeing and SpaceX for NASA's commercial crew transportation capability contracts. Unlike Boeing's Starliner and SpaceX's Dragon, both capsule-style spacecraft, Dream Chaser stood out as a sleek, winged spaceplane. But NASA's decision wasn't random. According to official documents, Sierra Nevada's proposal had 4 technical weaknesses, including concerns about schedule risks due to system complexity and immaturity. And even though the company scored well in mission suitability and earned a high rating for past performance, that wasn't enough to win. Sierra Nevada even protested the decision to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, but the protest was denied. There's also a deeper, more emotional reason for NASA's choice. Historically, NASA has never lost a crew capsule in spaceflight, but it did suffer 2 devastating tragedies with spaceplanes: Challenger and Columbia. Those disasters still cast long shadows. So, despite Dream Chaser's support, NASA and its funders leaned toward the more conservative option, relying on capsule designs that trace their lineage to the proven Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs. Capsules have another advantage. They're inherently stable during re-entry. Their rounded, weighted design keeps them oriented correctly, shield down, even if their thrusters fail. Spaceplanes like Dream Chaser, by contrast, require more complex piloting to safely decelerate and land on a runway instead of splashing down in a wide ocean. However, with the ongoing delays and issues surrounding Boeing's Starliner, and as Dream Chaser continues to advance in development, many in NASA and the space community are acknowledging the spaceplane's distinct benefits. On top of that, NASA is cautious about putting all its eggs in one basket with SpaceX. Having Dream Chaser in the mix offers redundancy, and that's a big deal. Just imagine, Sierra Nevada could bring back the spirit of the space shuttle, only safer, smarter, and more versatile. If that happens, the spaceflight market won't just be more diverse. it'll be more competitive and innovative. That's exactly the kind of dynamic environment that space giants like SpaceX thrive in, and the kind that drives real progress. As of 2025, Dream Chaser remains on the ground. Since it wasn't fully prepared in time, the spaceplane was removed from the second Vulcan launch, missing its originally targeted 2024 launch window. This delay came at a difficult moment, as ULA had to move ahead with its certification for its next-generation Vulcan Centaur rocket with the DoD. The Vulcan rocket itself has been hampered by years of setbacks, largely due to supply chain issues, most notably delays in the delivery of Blue Origin's BE-4 engines, which are critical to Vulcan's performance. These challenges slowed both certification and launch scheduling. Commenting on the change, ULA CEO Tory Bruno explained, "We are working with Sierra Space to put the Dream Chaser back onto the manifest when they are ready to go," and added, "We waited as long as possible on Dream Chaser because we really wanted to fly them." To provide some clarity, a tentative new launch date was given, no earlier than May 2025. But with May already behind us, there's been no official update so far. Although ULA's Vulcan rocket is now fully certified for national security missions, Dream Chaser's absence from the immediate schedule is hard to overlook. Still, the setback doesn't spell the end for the spacecraft. Bruno mentioned that ULA plans to conduct about a dozen launches in 2025, split between Atlas and Vulcan vehicles, and a mix of national security and commercial payloads. With all that in mind, there's still a strong chance Dream Chaser could take to the skies later this year. So, the big question is, will it finally happen? When diving into one of NASA's most controversial and eye-opening programs, it's impossible not to talk about the infamous duo, the Space Launch System rocket and the Orion spacecraft. And trust me, the numbers are nothing short of jaw-dropping. To date, SLS development alone has racked up a staggering $24 billion. Each launch, a mind-blowing $4 billion. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The infrastructure supporting SLS, like the much-delayed Mobile Launcher 2, has ballooned in cost, with that one project alone possibly costing up to $2.7 billion, way beyond what was originally budgeted. Zooming out, the larger Artemis campaign, which leans heavily on SLS, is projected to cost $93 billion between 2012 and 2025. A massive chunk of that is tied directly to SLS. Now, let's not forget Orion, because it's not looking much better. The Orion spacecraft has already seen around $20 billion in cost overruns. The project continues to be plagued by technical problems, from life support to heat shield issues. What's more troubling is that NASA's own Office of Inspector General has pointed out that Orion's life cycle costs leave out roughly $17.5 billion in related expenses, which conveniently hides the true financial burden. Since 2015, Orion has racked up over $900 million in additional costs. Contracts with Lockheed Martin show $900 million was allocated for the first 3 Orion capsules, and another $633 million for the next 3, with annual spending hovering between $1.1 and $1.4 billion in recent years. As taxpayers, it's frustrating, if not infuriating, to see billions of dollars seemingly evaporate into projects that struggle to meet deadlines and budgets. So when the White House's 2026 budget proposal explicitly recommends phasing out SLS and Orion after Artemis 3, it's no surprise that public interest, and perhaps even hope, spikes. Finally, it seems like someone might be trying to rein in spending and bring some accountability to space exploration. The new budget plan proposes phasing out SLS and Orion in favor of more affordable commercial options like SpaceX's Starship and possibly Blue Origin's New Glenn, starting with Artemis 4 in 2028. This transition also reflects the Trump administration's goal of trimming NASA's budget by $6 billion, cutting it from $24.8 billion to $18.8 billion, while still pushing forward with ambitious plans for the Moon and Mars. Part of that proposal includes canceling the Lunar Gateway, a major element of the later Artemis missions. But this shift isn't without its challenges. As promising as Starship is, it still hasn't shown the kind of reliability needed for crewed missions. The Block 2 hardware version has faced issues across its first 3 tests. And if we're aiming for deep space missions like those to the Moon or Mars, Starship will need to advance to a 3rd iteration, one that includes in-orbit refueling capabilities. That technology, which involves transferring fuel between starships in Earth orbit, is critical for extending its range and making it possible to haul heavy cargo and astronauts to distant destinations. However, developing and validating version 3 capability itself will take considerable time and effort, not to mention rigorous demonstration missions of orbital refueling techniques on it. So, what about Blue Origin's New Glenn? Unfortunately, there's not much to get excited about yet. The rocket has only flown once, and with Blue Origin's slow pace of development, expectations are understandably low. Complicating matters further is the proposed cancellation of the Lunar Gateway, which was supposed to be launched with SLS Block 1B for Artemis 4. Without a gateway, commercial systems would have to handle the entire lunar mission from start to finish, putting even more pressure on SpaceX and any other potential partners to deliver a fully integrated solution. So it's time to embrace the so-called old but gold flight-proven hardware. The matter here is the upgrades to it. Enter SpaceX's Crew Dragon. This spacecraft is a rock star. It's been ferrying astronauts to the ISS like a champ. It's got a dry mass under 10 tons, 50% more room than the Apollo capsule, and it's already nailed docking maneuvers, like when it shuffled ports on the ISS in May 2024. But here's the big idea. Launch Dragon on a Falcon Heavy, or even 2 Falcon 9s. One for Dragon, one for a propulsion module. They dock in low Earth orbit, just like NASA's Gemini 8 did back in 1966, when Neil Armstrong pulled off the first ever orbital docking. From there, Dragon zooms to the Moon, either staying in lunar orbit or linking up with a lander for a surface mission. No SLS, no billion-dollar price tag, just pure SpaceX ingenuity. With Dragon docking to a propulsion module in Earth orbit, you don't need a gateway. The propulsion module gives Dragon the kick to reach lunar orbit, where it could meet a pre-positioned lander, maybe even one delivered by Starship. After the crew does their moonwalking thing, they hop back to Dragon for the ride home. It's lean, it's fast, and it's way cheaper than SLS or even building a whole lunar station. But can Dragon really handle the Moon? Okay, let's be real. Dragon's built for low Earth orbit, not deep space. To go lunar, it needs some serious upgrades. First, propulsion. Dragon lacks the Delta V to get to the Moon and back, so the propulsion module is critical. Second, the heat shield. Dragon's Pika X is great for ISS re-entries at 7.8 kilometers per second, but lunar re-entries hit 11 kilometers per second, cooking the shield at much higher temperatures. SpaceX would need to beef it up, and that's untested territory. Third, radiation shielding and life support need tweaks for deep space travel. Think extra water layers or composites to block cosmic rays. Oh, and here's a kicker. Falcon Heavy isn't human-rated yet, meaning SpaceX would need to jump through NASA's safety hoops. Former NASA boss Jim Bridenstine even said modifying Dragon might make it look like Orion, NASA's deep space capsule. So it's not a slam dunk, but it's doable. So how could Dragon fit into NASA's lunar plans? Let's explore 2 awesome concepts. Option 1, hybrid mission with Starship. Imagine this, Dragon handles the crew, launching on Falcon Heavy or 2 Falcon 9s, docking in Earth orbit, and zipping to the Moon for short missions. Meanwhile, Starship, the beast with over 100 tons of cargo capacity, delivers habitats, rovers, or even water mining gear to build a lunar base. It's a tag team approach. Dragon gets astronauts there fast, while Starship sets up a permanent moon camp. Together, Dragon and Starship could make Artemis a reality without SLS, and skipping the gateway keeps things simple for early missions. Option 2. Emergency backup plan. What if Starship's not ready? It's still in testing, and those Raptor engines and heat shield tiles are tricky. If SLS gets canned and Starship's delayed, Dragon could be NASA's lifesaver for Artemis. Launch it with that propulsion module, dock in orbit, and send astronauts to the lunar surface with a lander. It's a quick fix to keep NASA on schedule, leveraging Dragon's proven track record and Falcon 9's affordability. This is clearly a cost-efficient option. Dragon's development cost was $1.7 billion. Peanuts compared to Orion's $23.7 billion. No gateway needed, just pure hustle to get boots on the moon. Why is this such a big deal? SLS and Orion are bleeding cash. $4 billion a launch and $24 billion in development. Dragon and Falcon 9 are a fraction of that, and SpaceX has a knack for making things work fast. Skipping the gateway could shave years off the timeline, getting us back to the moon sooner. Plus, Dragon's docking skills are rock solid, and we've got 50 years of NASA docking know-how from Gemini to lean on. Whether it's a hybrid mission with Starship or a clutch backup plan, Dragon could keep the Artemis dream alive and prove commercial space is the future. In addition, given a flight-proven Dragon vehicle, we can investigate other concepts, such as, first, crewed lunar mission with Dragon. SpaceX adapts the Crew Dragon spacecraft, originally designed for low Earth orbit, for a lunar flyby or landing mission. The concept could explore how Dragon's compact design, life support systems, and heat shield are modified for deep space travel, including radiation protection and extended life support for a lunar journey. Second, Dragon as a lunar lander. Instead of Starship's all-in-one approach, Dragon serves as a dedicated lunar lander, launched by a Falcon Heavy or another heavy-lift rocket. The concept could involve a modular lunar mission architecture, with Dragon docking to a separate propulsion module, focusing on cost efficiency and rapid deployment. Third, commercial lunar tourism. Dragon is used for private lunar missions, carrying wealthy tourists or researchers on circumlunar trips. This could highlight SpaceX's push for commercial space travel, with Dragon's proven reliability making it a quicker-to-deploy option compared to Starship's ongoing development. Fourth, scientific payload delivery. Dragon is repurposed to deliver scientific instruments, rovers, or sample return systems to the lunar surface. The concept could focus on a stripped-down, uncrewed Dragon variant, optimized for cargo, leveraging its existing parachute and propulsive landing capabilities for precise lunar touchdowns. So what do you think? Can Crew Dragon steal the show and get us to the moon without SLS or a gateway? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your wildest space ideas. If you love this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. Check out our other videos on Starship, Artemis, and more. And let's keep exploring the cosmos together. Until next time, stay curious and keep looking up. At the end of June, the European startup known as the Exploration Company made significant strides toward the first flight of its full-scale Nix spacecraft. To move closer to that goal, the company used its second subscale demonstrator, dubbed Mission Possible, to validate several core technologies. 4 major objectives were tested and achieved: structural performance during orbital flight, successful re-entry, autonomous navigation, and recovery under real-world conditions. Mission Possible was launched aboard SpaceX's Falcon 9 during the Transporter 14 rideshare mission on June 23rd. After separation from the rocket, the capsule operated as planned, powering its payloads and stabilizing itself in orbit. It then conducted a controlled re-entry and was able to re-establish communications post-blackout, a clear sign that it had survived the most intense heat and stress of re-entry, showcasing its structural and thermal resilience. Unlike the first demonstrator, Mission Bikini, Mission Possible is a more advanced capsule, about 60% the size of the full-scale Nix. It also became the first in the program to carry commercial payloads, roughly 300 kilograms, including scientific experiments involving cannabis and even human remains. Another milestone was hitting their timeline, launching on schedule this summer. That's a rare feat in the aerospace world, especially for a young company. As a comparison, consider the repeated delays seen by American counterpart Blue Origin. But the mission wasn't flawless. Just minutes before splashdown in the ocean, contact with the capsule was lost after the vehicle encountered an undisclosed anomaly. This led to a 3-day delay in recovering the vehicle and returning its payloads. A regret on an otherwise promising mission. The leading theory is a malfunction in the deployment of either the brake or main parachute. These chutes are supposed to deploy when the spacecraft slows to between 80% and 60% of the speed of sound. They were produced by US-based Airborne Systems, the same supplier used by industry giants like SpaceX and Boeing, so they're generally trusted. Still, something went wrong in this instance. Anyway, if you loved this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. Check out our other videos on Starship, Artemis, and more. And let's keep exploring the cosmos together. An investigation is currently underway. Originally, this June flight was meant to be the final test before fully transitioning to the full-scale Nix program. But in light of this issue, another small-scale demo may now be required. One thing seems certain: SpaceX's Falcon 9 will likely remain their go-to launch vehicle due to its reliability and successful track record. This may have stemmed from the failure of Nix's first subscale demonstrator. In July 2024, Exploration chose ESA's Ariane 6 to launch the Mission Bikini capsule. Unfortunately, that inaugural flight didn't go as planned. The rocket's upper stage failed to perform its deorbit burn, preventing the capsule from ever being deployed. It was a harsh lesson. A capsule that took 9 months to build, costing under €2 million, was lost, and no data was gathered since the mission never even began. This can be considered a big loss, especially for a relatively new player with limited capital and working to establish itself amid strong competition. That takes me back to SpaceX's early turbulent days, when they lost 3 Falcon 1 rockets in a row, between 2006 and 2008. The first attempt in March 2006 ended in failure less than a minute after liftoff due to a fire. The second try fared slightly better. The rocket climbed to nearly 180 miles in altitude and approached orbital speed, but failed during stage separation. Then came the third launch in August 2008, where trouble struck shortly after separation as the first stage collided with the second stage. From what I've researched, Falcon 1 took around 3.5 to 4 years of development before its first flight. Elon Musk capped the cost of each Falcon 1 launch at about $6.7 million. That includes the rocket build, but excludes overall development costs. At that time, SpaceX was a nobody to NASA or the Department of Defense. The company was still in its infancy, funded mainly by Elon Musk's personal fortune and a few private investors. Musk poured tens of millions of dollars of his own money into the company, just to keep it alive after the string of Falcon 1 failures. Interestingly, the first 2 Falcon 1 missions were actually funded by the Department of Defense under the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency Falcon project, providing some much-needed early revenue. Around 2006, NASA stepped in with support through its Commercial Orbital Transportation Services (COTS) program, offering milestone-based funding to help SpaceX develop the Falcon 9 and Dragon spacecraft. So those early Falcon 1 failures didn't just sting financially. They also fueled skepticism from critics of commercial space ventures. But despite the hits, SpaceX pushed through and achieved the success it has today. So when it comes to exploration's recent testing, while not perfect, it's encouraging. Like with any space endeavor, you have to walk before you can run. And in this case, they've taken a confident first step. The fact that Nyx survived hypersonic re-entry is a massive achievement on its own. That's one of the harshest environments a spacecraft can face. Sure, there are still issues to work through. Parachutes remain a critical single-point failure risk. But the ambition and progress on display here are real. Now, if Nyx looks familiar, that's probably because it shares a lot of DNA with SpaceX's Dragon. Both are reusable spacecraft designed to carry cargo to orbiting space stations and return via ocean splashdown. Nyx is even planned to evolve into a crewed version, much like SpaceX's Crew Dragon. In terms of size and capabilities, Nyx holds its own. It has a 4-meter diameter and can carry up to 4 tons of cargo into LEO for a maximum of 6 months, 2.5 tons pressurized and 1.4 tons unpressurized. For comparison, Dragon comes in at about 4 meters in diameter, but taller with 8.1 meters height, 6 tons total launch payload mass, and supports up to 3 tons of cargo on returns. Both spacecraft are built for autonomous docking to a space station in low Earth orbit. But here's where Nyx stands apart. It's not just an orbital workhorse. It's being built from day one with the Moon in mind. Nyx includes a 3-tier propulsion system, low-toxicity orbital thrusters, a refillable Methalox engine for deep space maneuvering, and a high-thrust reusable engine that can support lunar missions. That gives it serious potential for long-term exploration, both cargo and crew. The company itself is moving fast. Founded in 2021 by former Airbus executive Hélène Hubie, the exploration company has already raised nearly $230 million, including a $160 million Series B round in late 2024. That's incredible momentum for a startup. Nyx's first major mission is slated for 2028, delivering cargo to the International Space Station under a contract with ESA. They've also secured around $770 million in additional contracts, mostly with future private space station providers, showing strong commercial demand. Compared to other lunar lander projects like Blue Origin's Blue Moon, the exploration company is making real headway. They're not just talking about ambitions, they're checking off technical milestones, raising significant capital, and locking in agency partnerships early. Their focus on modularity, reusability, and deep space compatibility puts them in a unique position in the space logistics and lunar transport market. And down the road, don't be surprised if NASA starts looking at Nyx as a potential backup for its lunar exploration plans. A single launch lander with hopping capability could become a very attractive option. Nevertheless, to truly compete with the US, Europe's private space sector needs to become far more aggressive. Historically, Europe has taken a cautious, risk-averse approach to space, and that's held back its ability to nurture the kind of disruptive innovation that's thriving in the US. Take the ESA, for example. It tends to partner with large established players like Airbus, Thales Alenia Space, and Ariane Group, companies with proven track records and decades of experience. Because ESA is funded by a coalition of countries, there's a natural desire to minimize risk and ensure safety, which means choosing companies that are seen as safe bets for complex missions. Even when ESA steps outside the box, say with innovative efforts like space debris cleanup, the agency still proceeds cautiously. A good example is ClearSpace, a small Swiss startup selected for an ambitious orbital cleanup mission. But that contract only came after ESA thoroughly vetted their technology and took extra steps to de-risk the project. Meanwhile, competition is heating up, especially from the East. China, in particular, is pulling ahead. In recent years, China has consistently ranked among the top countries for delivering payloads to orbit. In 2023, it was second globally in payload mass to orbit, behind only SpaceX. And in 2024, China increased its launch count from 67 to 68. Europe, by comparison, managed only 3 launches in 2024, putting it behind not just China and the US, but also Japan, India, and even Iran. This lack of innovation also ties directly into a lack of independence. Europe still doesn't have its own crewed spacecraft or launch capability for astronauts. European astronauts rely on US vehicles, like SpaceX's Crew Dragon, to reach space, which creates a dependency on NASA for both access and technology. So the development of the exploration company's spaceship Nix is truly a beacon. This situation is the result of long-standing cooperation between ESA and NASA. Europe has focused on building specialized modules, like the Orion Service Module and the Columbus Module for the ISS, while NASA handles launch and crew systems. It's a partnership that works, but it means Europe isn't building full end-to-end systems. So when the US catches a cold, ESA ends up sneezing too. According to Elon Musk's recent tweet, SpaceX is projected to generate around $15.5 billion in revenue this year. That marks a steady increase from the estimated $13 billion to $14 billion in 2024. This upward trend continues to be fueled largely by the growth of Starlink and the company's launch services. In particular, Starlink is expected to bring in $11.8 billion, a sharp rise from the $8.2 billion it made last year. This figure includes income from consumer subscriptions, hardware sales, and government contracts. Meanwhile, revenue from launch services is set to grow from $4.2 billion to $5.5 billion, covering both commercial and governmental launches, with NASA alone contributing $1.1 billion. Additional revenue streams like research and development and spacesuits will add approximately $600 million. Clearly, Starlink has emerged as the primary driver of the company's financial success, fueled by growing global demand for satellite internet. This is a major milestone, not just for SpaceX, but for the entire space industry. For some perspective, NASA's total budget in 2024 was $25.5 billion, and it's expected to drop to $18.8 billion by 2026. Based on current projections, that budget is unlikely to rise significantly before 2030. In contrast, SpaceX's revenue is climbing rapidly and is poised to surpass NASA's annual budget as soon as next year. SpaceX's potential growth has also shown in the fact that very few shareholders are willing to part with their stock, according to Elon Musk. It's hard to believe that just 23 years ago, SpaceX consisted basically of carpet and a mariachi band, an abstract way of saying that they were nothing to NASA at the time. They didn't even reach orbit until September 2008 with the Falcon 1, and came dangerously close to collapse after multiple failed launches. Without successful launches, there's no revenue. At the rock bottom, SpaceX relied heavily on NASA funding and contracts to survive. Musk himself must personally invest tens of millions to keep the company afloat. Their first major NASA deal came in 2006 through the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services Program, which awarded them $278 million to develop the Falcon 9 rocket and the Dragon spacecraft. The real turning point came in late 2008 when they launched Falcon 1 successfully and secured a $1.6 billion commercial resupply services contract with NASA, a deal that ultimately saved the company. SpaceX had later evolved Falcon 1 into the more capable Falcon 9 and was racking up achievements that laid the groundwork for even bigger ambitions. Around that time, Musk and his team started working on what would become Starlink. They began development at a facility in Redmond, Washington, which today serves as the hub for Starlink's research, production, and satellite operations. Musk first teased the concept in January 2015, though the name Starlink wasn't made official until later. The first prototype satellites, Tintin A and Tintin B, launched in February 2018, and the first operational batch followed in May 2019. As of June 2025, Starlink has been under development for just over 10 years and now includes nearly 8,000 satellites in orbit as of March. The consistent, substantial revenue it generates has helped transform SpaceX from a company once dependent on NASA into a diversified space enterprise with a range of income streams. This evolution has been good news for both SpaceX and NASA. SpaceX's success has brought down the cost of space launches and made access to space more attainable. That's allowed NASA to reallocate its budget from expensive launch systems to science and exploration missions. Additionally, NASA's commercial cargo and crew programs, largely carried out by SpaceX, have restored America's ability to send astronauts to the ISS from U.S. soil, ending its reliance on international partners. Thanks to SpaceX's advancements in reusability and its rapid development cycles, the entire aerospace sector has been pushed to innovate, which in turn supports NASA's own missions. Their mutually beneficial partnership lets NASA tap into private sector agility while staying focused on bold goals like the Artemis lunar missions and future Mars expeditions. Still, SpaceX's extraordinary rise also casts an unintended spotlight on some of the inefficiencies within NASA's internal operations. First, let's talk launch costs. SpaceX's Falcon 9 costs about $62 million per launch, while NASA's SLS rockets, a jaw-dropping $4 billion. And it gets even more wild. A 2022 study revealed that SpaceX is not only 10 times cheaper, but also has 30 times fewer cost overruns than NASA when sending payloads to space. That's not just an advantage, it's a revolution. While NASA has been struggling to get its massive orange SLS rocket off the ground for just a second time, SpaceX has been launching at breakneck speed. Since its first launch in March 2006 up to June 2025, the Falcon family has taken off 500 times, averaging one launch every 14 days for nearly 2 decades. On one side, you have launches that take years to prepare. On the other, SpaceX fires rockets nearly twice a month, and their pace is only accelerating. In 2020 and 2021, they had 26 and 31 launches. By 2022, they broke records with 61 launches. That shot up to 96 in 2023, including the first few Starship flights. And in 2024, a staggering 134 launches. Now in 2025, they're aiming for 170. That's nearly one launch every other day. At the core of this launch frenzy is the Falcon 9's design goal: low cost, rapid reusability. Just look at the math. NASA's space shuttle cost about $1.5 billion per flight. Falcon 9? Just $15 million in operational costs per launch. That's 1% of the price, and it flies 30 times more often, breaking that $15 million down. $10 million is spent on building a brand new second stage, which isn't reusable. And $5 million goes toward things like fuel, recovery, and refurbishment. But here's where it gets brilliant. SpaceX charges customers at least $50 million for a reused Falcon 9 flight. That number has risen over time, and it helps fund mega projects like Starlink and Starship. Let's run the numbers. If SpaceX launches 2 reused Falcon 9 rockets in a row, they make about $110 million from customers, but spend only $65 million to do it. That means they earn about $45 million in profit. And if one booster can fly 10 times, the total cost for those flights is about $210 million, meaning SpaceX can basically launch its own Starlink satellites for free using the extra capacity. What's the secret sauce? Elon Musk once explained that booster refurbishment involves deep inspections like X-raying the fuel tanks, cleaning the landing legs, and unclogging Merlin engines. Kerosene is a messy fuel, yet the whole process is surprisingly simple, with refurbishment costs as low as $250 per booster. Most of the hardware stays flight-ready with minimal tweaks. Only certain parts, like turbines, need occasional replacement. Now let's talk innovation. SpaceX doesn't just move fast, they move at warp speed. Take the Polaris Dawn mission in September 2024. It featured the first ever commercial spacewalk, accomplished for a fraction of NASA's price tag. Meanwhile, NASA's Artemis program has been plagued by delays. Artemis 3 is now postponed until 2027. Finally, mission outcomes. NASA has a storied history. Think Hubble, the Mars rovers, and the International Space Station. But SpaceX is catching up fast. They've already flown astronauts to the ISS, launched thousands of Starlink satellites, and are working on Starship, which could take humans to Mars. The best part? SpaceX's success is forcing NASA to innovate. They're now partnering with private companies more than ever. But the question remains, if SpaceX can do this with a fraction of the budget, why are we pouring billions into a bloated system? Don't get me wrong, NASA has an incredible legacy. They landed humans on the moon in 1969 with Apollo 11, and they've inspired generations. But here's the thing. NASA's budget and how they spend it has some serious issues. In 2024, NASA's budget ballooned to $25.5 billion. That's a 51.7% increase since 2019, according to the NASA Transition Authorization Act of 2025. But a lot of that money isn't going to cutting-edge missions. Take the Office of STEM Engagement, for example. They spent $143.5 million on feel-good programs in 2024. Now, STEM education is awesome, but when taxpayers are footing the bill, shouldn't that money go toward actual space exploration? And here's the kicker. The White House just proposed slashing NASA's 2026 budget to $18.8 billion, a huge drop from $25 billion. Why? Because private companies like SpaceX are proving they can do more with less. NASA's also bogged down by bureaucracy. Every year their budget has to go through Congress. And if it's not approved by October 1st, NASA can't even pay its employees. The National Space Agency also faces intense scrutiny and pressure to avoid failures because it uses taxpayer money, and every failure can lead to congressional hearings and investigations. That's a lot of red tape slowing things down. So, what does the dominance of SpaceX mean for the future of space exploration? SpaceX's rise is a wake-up call. Their $15.5 billion revenue in 2025, set to surpass NASA's budget in 2026, proves that the private sector can deliver results without the bureaucratic baggage. But NASA still has a role to play. A 2023 Pew Research survey found that 65% of Americans believe NASA is essential for space exploration, even with private companies in the game. NASA's strength is in big, risky science, like studying distant galaxies or landing rovers on Mars. Stuff that might not have immediate commercial value but pushes human knowledge forward. The real win here might be collaboration. NASA and SpaceX are already working together on missions like the Artemis program, where SpaceX's Starship will help land astronauts on the moon. If we can combine SpaceX's efficiency with NASA's scientific expertise, we could see a new golden age of space exploration. But that means slashing red tape and rethinking how we spend taxpayer money. What do you think? Is SpaceX the future, and does NASA still have a critical role? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear what you think. SpaceX's success isn't just redefining space, it's inspiring a new wave of competitors. Take Sierra Space, for example. Their Dream Chaser spaceplane is still in its early operational stages, with its first cargo missions to the International Space Station set to begin in 2025. So far, Sierra Space has raised a solid $1.7 billion in private funding and secured $3.4 billion in active contracts, including NASA's commercial resupply services. But let's be real, compared to SpaceX's massive and diversified empire, Dream Chaser is still a small player. Dream Chaser is a reusable spaceplane built for cargo and eventually crew missions. Right now, its primary role is serving NASA's ISS needs, and its launch frequency and contract scope are much more limited compared to SpaceX, which offers a wide range of satellite and launch services. Sierra Space's current valuation of about $5.3 billion and its $3.4 billion backlog shows strong potential. But that hasn't yet translated into revenues anywhere close to the tens of billions that SpaceX brings in every year. On the flip side, SpaceX's financial engine is powered by a massive launch manifest, government and commercial contracts, and especially Starlink, a game-changer for recurring revenue. That combination makes SpaceX a true commercial space powerhouse. For Sierra Space to level up, it needs to move beyond just cargo missions. Growth means expanding into human spaceflight, building commercial space stations, and developing other space infrastructure. But those are longer-term plays.